Good morning or good afternoon, whatever the time is where you're joining us from. Thanks for attending today's live training and Q&A session. In just a few minutes, Antony is going to lead today's topic of mastering PractiTest dashboards. But for those of you who might be new to PractiTest, I wanted to just give you a little bit of an introduction on who we are as a company and what we do. We were founded in 2008 as one of the first completely SaaS-based test management platforms. At the time, other companies were really focused on on-prem. As testing evolved over the years, we evolved alongside it by supporting both manual and automated testing. Today, we have AI-based features and capabilities that help our customers take the guesswork out of their testing and automate many time-consuming manual tasks, freeing up their time to focus on what's most important. We're trusted by global leaders across many business sectors, from retail to technology to healthcare, government, education, and many others. We're an established leader. Our customers rely on PractiTest to help them deliver quality software faster to meet their own consumer demands. We have a very user-friendly platform. We put a lot of thought and planning to making sure that it is as user-friendly as possible. We also incorporate industry standard privacy and security protocols, making sure that your data is as protected as possible. Our customers really love us. They give us a lot of positive feedback nearly every year in terms of offering world-class support, quick implementation, easy administration, and high ROI. So thank you for that. We also wanted to let you know, for those who might be watching this at a later point, we have another training session coming up on September 6th that will be focused on how to help you get the most out of PractiTest with various workflows and automation tools. Also wanted to let you know 2 events coming up. We've got a LinkedIn Live session that's going to be on September 6th at 9 a.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Central European Time. And it's all about how to solve key business problems and help propel your career forward. We also have a guest webinar hosted by Lavina Ramchandani, and that'll be focusing on how to apply BDD to your test automation. It's a 3-part mini-series, so please join us on September 13th. Today's agenda, which will begin momentarily, Antony is going to lead the topic on really focusing on the difference between dashboards and reports, how to keep dashboards relevant and up to date with as little effort as possible, where to keep those for compliance and for long-term usage should you need any historical records on down the line, and how to get the most value out of your data. As always, we encourage you to raise your hand, ask any questions, give us any feedback on how the sessions are going. If there are any topics you'd like us to cover in the future, please let us know. And with that, Antony, the floor is yours.
So we start off by talking about dashboards and reports, because PractiTest includes both of these facets. You could do dashboards, which are charts or pieces of information which are put onto shown up on a dashboard chart, or you can do more classic reports, which can be either Excel reports, or we have some detailed reports for PDF as well. And we're going to talk about the differences between dashboards and reports, and to start with. And the classic difference is that dashboards are much higher level, but they don't tend to give you individual information about individual tests, entities which are in the system. They will give you a number or a graph to show you roughly what's going on, and then you can find out the numbers, but then you can't find out anything which is actually specific. So bear that in mind as we go through, because we have both to fill in gaps which either area of the system actually has. So what we want to talk about is how to keep dashboards relevant and up to date with minimal effort. You can spend lots and lots of time creating wonderful dashboards, but then if you have to do major maintenance on them every time something changes in the system, then you're going to be spending a lot of time and getting into frustration as well. So one of the things we're going to talk about is how to keep your dashboards up to date without having to do major work to do so. We're also going to talk about things when we go into reports about how you can do compliance, because many people who produce reports need to do so with compliance in mind, and long-term storage as well. And finally, we're going to talk about getting more out of your data. Organizing it is just the beginning. How can you use your data to get more value from the system as well? And for that, what we're going to start with is looking at some dashboards. And I'm going to create something from scratch, because I think the best way to start on things today is to start with something blank. I've got a dashboard here, you can see over here. Let's go through the process of actually creating a dashboard, see how easy it is, and we'll create some charts for different purposes as well. So let's start off by going to New Dashboard tab over here. And you can have 8 dashboard items on each tab. Let's call it Training Release. There we go. And I'm going to make it a public dashboard. I can have private dashboards if I want, which are only going to be for me, or I can have public dashboards. And I can also enable an external URL, a coded URL. And if I do that, what it means is that anyone, they don't have to be PractiTest users, can access the dashboard. So I'm just going to, we have to save it first before we can do that. And so I'm going to go back here a moment, and now I'm going to enable external URL. And you see it's come out with a coded URL here, and then you can copy that, share it with anyone you want, and it will be available to them. We also have the ability to do it with, let's do save, we need to save it. And then if I click on here, you'll see my dashboard here. Trading release, external dashboard, and of course we don't have anything on it yet, but it's just been put here. And you could use it in the olden days when we used to work in offices. I don't know if any of you still do work in offices. What we used to do is we used to, in the QA department, we used to have a big screen up on the wall. And on the wall, you could put in, or it was in the lounge or something like that, you could put your testing statuses, and people could just wander in and look and see how the testing of any particular release was going by looking at the dashboard on the wall. So that's what this is intended for. It's also intended if you want to give your CEO, your CTO a link to this dashboard, you can give it to them, and then they'll be able to see what's going on in PractiTest without actually needing to have a PractiTest license. It's a high-level view, which is probably just the sort of information that they want. They don't want you to go drilling down into things and say, well, we've got these particular 5 test cases, and they're about this and that. No, they just want a quick number. Is this release ready for to go into production for the big time? Yes or no? And you can put a dashboard which will give you that sort of information. So let's start now and create our dashboard. So if we go back to here and click Add Dashboard Item, then it will take us to the dashboard item page, and we can decide what we're going to have for our dashboard item. Now, when it comes to naming dashboard items, you can give them a name, but you don't have to. That's optional. And if you don't, it will just take the fields that you've used to give your dashboard, and then it will just put them in and give you some relatively meaningful information. So let's start off with a common dashboard, and let's say that we want to see our instances. How's our run going along? So let's create an instance entity here, and we're going to select our item type, and our item type is going to be a distribution table. And I'm going to click continue to go on and choose by fields. So in a distribution table or a bar chart for that matter, I have the ability to have 2 different fields, and I can plot them against each other. So this is great either to see things like execution against particular areas of the software, maybe. Supposing I want to look at my features and I want to see how many tests for each feature have passed and how many have failed. So what I could do here is I can set up test set, and I can go and I can set, well, for the X field, I'm going to set test, and I'm going to set my feature. So I'm going to go to test here, and I'm going to look through my custom fields, which I've already got in the system for this, and I'm going to find my feature field, which is over here. I'm going to click feature over here, and then I'm going to go to Y field, and for my Y field, I'm going to take my run stat. And then I'm going to click on this little box over here. This is the most wonderful box in the whole of dashboards, this checkbox, because what it means is it will show you a preview over here without going out of the page of what it has generated, so that I can see whether this is going to be meaningful to me or not. I'm just going to click the Save Dashboard Item button, and up it's going to pop with a dashboard here. It's got the list of all my features, and then it's got their run statuses over here. So I've got my features list over here. It tells me how many have passed, how many have failed, how many are not completed. Now, this tells me how many I have run since the whole time I started this project. I might not want to do that. I might only want to see what's in the present release. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change my filter, and this will take my test sets filter, and it's going to choose, I'm going to choose the present release, which for me, if I go down here and look through the list of releases which I've got, let's find something. Let's say it's Sprint 3. So if I click on Sprint 3, click Save Dashboard Item here, and you'll see it's now changed. And it now gives me only the information which is relevant to Sprint 3. If I prefer to use charts instead of numbers, I can change this to a bar chart. It will be exactly the same information, but it will just be shown in a bar chart rather than using numbers. And if I click Save Dashboard Item now, you'll see that I've got my features over here. It shows me how many have passed and how many have failed for each one. And I can put these and make these appear on my dashboard. So if I go back to my dashboard now and have a look at my dashboard, and we go to the Training Release tab, now we see this particular dashboard over here. Now I can set my tabs over here and choose which one I want to be my default tab. I had to go to Training Release, and each time I come in, I'm going to have to go to Training Release. Supposing I want Training Release to be my main dashboard. So what I can do is I can click on my name over here and go to Personal Settings. And when I look at Personal Settings, I can choose my default dashboard over here, and I'm going to set it as Training Release. I'm going to click Save. And now when I go to Info Center and Dashboards, it will show me my Training Release as the main dashboard. Now, let's do another chart. I think I want to do a chart to see who's been doing testing and make sure that I've got a good balance amongst my testers of the testing workload. So I'm going to go back to Customize, add a new dashboard item over here. And then I'm going to select for instances again. And this time, I'm going to click on the item type, bar chart again, because I think bar chart will be very meaningful to show if I want to compare the columns and see how many people are doing what. And then I'm going to select all test sets this time, and I'm going to go to here, and I'm going to select my X field to be tester. So if I click tester over here, I can see who's actually tested. And then on the Y field, I'm going to click run status. Again, the checkbox, and then I'm going to click Save Dashboard Items. And now it shows me who the tester is. Now, this isn't terribly meaningful because I'm the only one testing in this account at the moment. But if there were other testers who were testing, then you'd see a set of columns over here, and you can see how many how many tests they have set to each of the different statuses. You'll be able to see how many they've done. And if you've got a big disparity, then you can organize redistributing the work between your testers like that. So that's another useful chart that we can do. Let's move on and have a look at our classic pie charts to see how many items have just passed and failed. Because although we could do bar charts, we could also do pie charts. And doing pie charts will show us one piece of information, but with a filter. And bar charts will show us two pieces of information with a filter. So I'm going to go to pie chart over here. I'm going to click continue. And this time I'm going to I'm going to put a filter on again. Let's say it's the regression tests. And I'm going to select a field of run status. And I'm going to click Save Dashboard Item. Now you'll see that I've got quite a lot of tests here, which are no run. I've got a few which have failed, quite a few have failed, and a number which have passed. If I change the filter, I might find that I've got a very different, oh, so this is for all test sets. So if I set it to my regression, I must have accidentally not clicked on that. So if I set for functional, let's say over here now, click say, oh, that's because, 1 second. Let me just go over here and choose a particular, by version 12. No, let's not do that. Sprint, let's do sprint 3 again, as we were doing before. Click save item here. And now I've got a lot of no runs. I've got a few which are set as failed and a couple which are set as passed. Now, if I've got a very red graph over here, because a lot of my tests have failed, I may feel that that's not fair, because although they may have failed, I may have had 10, 20 steps in these tests, and they might have all failed at step number 20. So I've got 19 happy steps, and then the final step which failed. And I've done a lot of work. We're very close to this release being ready. They've just got a couple of small bugs. They've just got small bugs in the last step which need to be fixed. Whereas 90% of the testing has been done. But I may feel that the testing graph which I've got here does not reflect that. So what I could do is I could do 2 graphs together. And I've got here for the whole test, but I could also do a step status test graph, which will show me all of the steps. So if you look here, I've only got 4, I've got twice as many failed as passed over here. If I now go to run status and click save now based on a step status pie, let's see what happens. And you can see now that I've got 3 failed and 2 passed. So I've got closer to the to an equal number now. But in this case, this is just testing data. So I've got a disparity here between the number of steps passed and the number of whole tests which have passed. But you might find that there's a much greater disparity in your cases, and you want to show both of these charts. So you can show both of these charts together, put them together, and that will give a much more complete picture than just showing one chart or the other. Either one of them may give an untruthful picture. You know, it's just as untruthful to say, well, we've got an instances step status pi, 99 steps are passing and 10 are failing, and therefore we're 99% there. And they might think, oh, we're almost there. It's just, but then you still do have the fact that 10 of your tests have failed. So it's the fairest way is to show both of these graphs together. And we can do that showing both of them on our dashboard charts as well. So that's the step status pi. Let's move on and have a look at a couple of other graphs we can do. We can also do, for example, an execution progress graph. And this is particularly useful to give you how your testing is progressing across time. So if we do here again for sprint 3, we're going to show it for, let's say, 3 weeks. And then we're going to click Save Dashboard Item. And this shows you that basically I haven't done anything for the last 3 weeks. But what would hopefully happen in real life is that it would go up like this when you start testing. So you would have a mixture of greens and reds going up here. And then after a while, the greens will start squashing out the reds. And then at the end of your timing period, you can set this by sprint, for example, sprint periods. You will have very few failures, and most of your results will now be passes. So that's the step status pi. We can also do a planned against actual execution chart. So if you have dates which you're going to put in, we can produce a chart which is similar to a burn down chart and shows you how you're getting against what you're meant to be doing and what you're actually doing. So let's do this as being all test sets, because I've only got very few planned execution dates set in my system. So here we go. Here, for example, we've got our planned execution start dates starting from 30 days in the past and going 7 days in the future. If you want, you can set absolute dates, but this is the way it's progressing. we can see that we've got all these executed and we've got none planned really at the moment. But if you set planning dates for your execution of tests, then you'll see those coming up on here as well. And it will show you how close you are to your target line of your testing so that you're able to plan your resources and make sure that you have enough people doing your testing for you to be able to fulfill your releases and what's needed. Okay, so let's look at one other type of chart here, which is a very interesting chart, and that's for the issues module. People say to us often, you know, I'm testing in Jira, I've got my issues in Jira, I've got my requirements in Jira. Why do I need to be able to see them in PractiTest? And so firstly, if you're testing, then it's nice to be able to see your testing work in PractiTest and have all the links between the tests and the traceability. But also you could use PractiTest graphs as well. And a particularly interesting graph that we have is the issues age graph. And if I switch here to the module of issues, then we can choose our item type and we can do age graph over here. And then I can click continue. I'm going to use all filters and I'm going to say group by status. And if I click save dashboard item over here, I can now see all of my statuses. If you're synced with Jira, you'll see all your Jira statuses over here as well. And then across it, you can see how long each of these issues has been in there. So you can see that I've got 6 issues which are set over here from closed from 1 day ago. From 2 weeks ago, I've got 3 which were closed. And then I've got over here at 3 months, I've got new issues. And you can see how many issues I've got which are still 2 years old, which are still open. It might be easier to take out our closed issues. So you could create a filter and say that you want to see only issues which are opened, for example. And then if I do that, the open statuses, then you can see only your open status. Or if you want to just rule out the closed statuses, you could do is not closed as your status on the filter. And then it will show all the other filters, but not closed. If you only want to see the closed ones so that you can see how quickly issues are being resolved, then you could do show me only the closed ones, and it will show me the statuses of closed and how long ago they were closed and how quickly you're going through this. So this is really useful for being able to see how quickly issues are being resolved, if they're being resolved fast enough or not fast enough. Let's move on and take a look at our newest chart. And that is what we're calling gauges. So if I go back to instance, a gauge is like a wheel, and it's half a wheel, a semicircle, and it shows you whether you're in an acceptable realm of passes or fails or anything else. If you want to do coverage, you could choose your coverage as well. But let's do one to show how our passes and failures are progressing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select gauge over here, continue. And then if we do filter, we can filter it or not filter it. And then we can select our field as run status. I'm going to choose. And then I'm going to select field value is passed, or we could choose any of the others, but I'm going to choose passed. And then I'm going to say that 0 to, let's say, 15% is red. Then I could do 15 to, let's say, 80% is yellow. And then 80 to 100 is going to be a green, which is good. And I can click Save Dashboard item here. And immediately you're going to see my gauge over here. And you can see that only 15.65% of my tests have passed. Therefore, I'm in the red section because I said, well, 15.65, it's slightly on the yellow, but let's not quibble over 1%. It's showing that we're in a low area here. This is still a work in progress. So we will be getting this slightly more exact as well. But you can see that at only 15.65%, that's not a particularly good option. I can also choose whether over here, I can do it by numbers or percentages, I think, in some of the charts as well, but apparently not in this one. You can sometimes use numbers or percentages. So here we can see that for here it wouldn't make sense to use numbers, actual numbers, because it needs to be based on a percentage. So we've got our percentages over here. You can see whether they're good or bad. If I move this down, down to 10%, for example, then you'll see save dashboard item. It's now into the yellow. So this could be a useful, very quick demonstration to show what is considered to be good or bad. You can do this with any of your fields, and you can then choose a particular value, whether it's good or bad. So that basically gives us an idea of what you can do with dashboards. You could also show things like coverage. If I wanted to do something to show coverage, for example, I could look at my tests, for example, and I could select a bar chart, and I could do my feature, and then I could do it against sprint, for example. So I could see how many tests I'm doing for each sprint. I don't have a sprint in this particular section. Let's make it in instances, because I do have the sprint on the test sets. So if I go for bar chart again, click continue, and then I've got all test sets. I've got my run status over here. I'm going to change that, and I'm going to make it test feature, and I'm going to put it against sprint. Test set, sprint or release version in my case. So I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to click save over here, save dashboard item. And immediately I can see all my features, and I can see my testing statuses over here. Let's get rid of this and move it down to the bottom. Legend. Save for that. And voila. There I've got all my features, and I can see them against the sprints over here, feature A, etc. So I've got all of my versions, and I've got how many instances are in the different versions here. So I don't like it this way around. Let's turn it the other way around. Very easy to do. I can change it to test set version over here. There we go. And I'm going to switch it to test feature over here. Let's move it around and see, save dashboard item. Let's see if that's better. And now I can see by my sprints. And I can see, for example, I've done a lot of sprinting on testing on sprint 1. I've done very little testing on sprint 12. So I know that that's a deficient sprint. And if and what I can do is I can go and plan them and try and get my tests correct for each sprint, and work out that each sprint will have the correct number of tests in it, and organize them so that I have the correct number of tests for each sprint and correct coverage. You could have, for example, also feature against component or something else, operating system, for example. How many tests am I doing for each operating system? There we go. You can see that I'm doing a lot more testing for Android Oreo than I am doing for Android Pie, for example. And so you can see what your coverage is, how good your coverage is based on using these graphs. Okay, up to this point, any questions? Questions? Comments? Discussions? Come on, somebody. Okay, I'll continue talking about reports now. But, before I do go on to reports, one of the things which I said I was going to talk about was how to maintain things more easily. We've been flicking around here, and we've been changing the sprints manually in the dashboards. And if you've got 10, 20 dashboards, it can be items, it can be quite difficult to change all the sprints. You have to go into everyone, and each time you want to change sprint, then you need to come in here, change the sprint from sprint 1 to sprint 2, whatever it is, take the filter, change it, change the sprint number. There is an easier way of doing this that we devised. And that is that if we work from our test sets and runs module, and then we have our current release, we mark it as being current release. And so let's say that a particular sprint is going to be our current release. We can set up a checkbox in our test sets and runs module for current release. And there it is over there. Now, obviously, you're not going, it would be jumping out of the frying pan and going into the fire to actually go into every test set and manually change it like this, click the edit button, click current release, and then save it and then move backwards and forwards. For that, what we would do is we'd use the batch edit. So let's say that sprint 6 is our current release. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find sprint 6 over here in my sprints. Let's go to auto filter by version. Let's go and find my list over here. Do I have a version? Oh, new filter. Let's create a filter for it. So I'm going to do auto filter by, and I'm going to select version over here, and I'm going to do create filter. Okay, so I've now got my auto filter by version over here. I've got all my version numbers over here. And what I'm going to do is I want now version 2 to be the current release. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of them and I'm going to mark them all as being not current release. So I'm going to do a select all on everything, select all. And then because I might have some other stuff which is current release, I'm going to do batch edit over here. And I'm going to select the current release checkbox. There we go. And I'm going to save it as blank. Updating it. Yep. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the ones which are in version 2 to be current release. So I'm going to go to current version 2. I'm going to select them all, auto filter by version 2, and I'm going to do batch edit. Okay, and I'm going to go to current release, and I'm going to select them as being current release. Yes. Take a moment, and now it's updated our 22 test sets and it's marked them as current release. Now, the great thing about this is now I can go to my dashboards or my reports, and I can use a new filter in them. And I'm going to use the filter, instead of all instances of sprint 3, I'm going to switch it to being current release. So let me just find my sprint over here, and I'm going to look for current release over here. Do I have a current release? I should do. There we go, current release. And I'm going to click Save Dashboard Item. And now I'm going to see all my current release, which is sprint 2. Now, all I have to do to change it now is just go unmark them as sprint 2 from current release. And with the checkbox, uncheck the box for all of them, and then just move it to the next one, sprint 3. And so if I've got 20 dashboard items all marked with the current release filter, I don't need to manually change all of them one at a time. I can just use the current release for everything and switch it. Okay. Another thing that we can do with dashboards or reports for that matter is we can use cross-filtering as well. And cross-filtering is very powerful for bringing in data sets and improving your data sets and getting the information that you want into a particular filter. So let's say, for example, I've got my issues module over here. And if you look at your issues, you'll see that I don't actually have a release number in here. I've got my current release, but supposing now I don't want to have current release that I have to manually manage from over here and click it. Supposing I want to be able to use a filter which takes the current release, which I've created in the test sets and runs, and uses that. I don't need this current release checkbox over here, and I don't need to manually update it. So let's go to our issues module, and let's create a new filter here. And let's call it current release. Now, it's not going to let me do it because it exists already. So I'm going to have to add something. And I'm going to just say from TS and test sets. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add not an AND criteria, a cross filter criteria. And it takes a little bit of time because it does lots of weird joins in the database for this. So it takes a little time to load this one up. This is the slowest bit of the whole system. And once it comes up in a moment, then it gives me cross filter is, and then I can select test set. And I'm going to select current release from test set. And now what it's going to do is it's going to pull everything which is in the current release and test set, and it's going to mark it for current release in this particular area over here in the issues module. And if I open an issue over here, you'll see that if you look at the traceability, it comes from, it's linked to test 8. And if we go to test 8, we can go through the whole cycle and find out where test 8 is. But test 8 will have an instance in the current release. So if I go to the run, look at the run, and then go back to the test set 39 in regression, you'll see that it's in version 2, which is our current release. And so what I've done is I've tied my data set for the issues module by using a cross filter into here. I can now see my bugs which are relevant just for current release without having to create a current release filter manually and update it from here. So now I've got a single point in the whole system, and I can do it for tests as well. I can pull it back to the test as long as I have my current release in the test sets and I update it in test sets. By doing that batch edit on off, it's just two sets of commands, then it can spread across the whole system, and I can have all of this information across the whole system for filtering purposes, for my dashboards and for my reports. And it's great for the dashboards because now that I've changed my dashboard, let's go back to the dashboard. If I send to dashboards, you can see that this is now controlled by current release over here. And if I change the current release, all these charts will automatically change and I don't have to do anything else to them. Questions? Okay, let's move on to the other part of the system and talk a little bit about reports. PractiTest has reports for things which you need more detail for, essentially. And so we can produce Excel reports of any data in the system for you, and you're able to then download it, take it away with you, share it with anyone who you want to, do things like review meetings, test case review meetings, sprint review meetings, etc., using our reports. So if we go to Info Center and we go to reports over here, you'll see that we have here the reports page. And anything which comes onto this reports page will stay here, and it's always available for you to download by clicking on the Excel icon over here. You'll notice that certain reports also have a PDF icon. Those are for the detailed reports. We'll take a brief look at the detailed reports as well, but they tend to be very large. And so unless you have very aggressive filtering on them, they can be too big and too bulky for you to actually use and make useful and use usefully. So let's take a look at an Excel report that we've got over here. You'll see that we've got some plus signs. Plus signs mean that this report has been run more than once. And you can run reports either by a schedule, or you can run them manually by just clicking on this little flash of lightning over here, and it will create a new report, including the latest data. And so, for example, supposing you do your current release filter, if you put a current release filter onto your report, then what it will do is it will always use whatever your current release is. So you don't have to manually update them. You can have a schedule, run it every couple of weeks. And then at the beginning of the sprint or the end of the sprint, and then you'll be able to see all the information automatically updated. It will send you a message to say that this report has been run, and then you'll be able to download the data, or else just come into this page, click the download button, and then you'll see always the latest version, which is up here, and then collapsed but expandable, you'll see all the previous versions of that particular report. So let's take a look and see what you can do with creating a report. So we've got our different areas of the system again. We've got our requirements reports. We've got our instances reports. We've got our test case reports, issues reports. We have run reports as well. So if you want to see multiple runs of the same test instance, you can see that as well by using a run report. We've got tabular aggregated reports, which give you a nice little chart of showing you different custom fields against each other with their pass and fail. Let's try one of those. So if we go, I want this report, we can do, let's say, test set version. I'm going to put a filter on it, or else it's going to be impossible. So I'm going to do by test type, regression. And then I'm going to do it by version. And I'm going to do it against, let's say, test feature. Let's find our test feature. And I'm going to click create. Let's see what we get with this. Oh, I need to give it a name. It would help if I gave it a name. Training aggregated. It's always a little bit of a risk doing these things because I don't know whether I've got good data. Because you would obviously all have good data, but I won't always. So it's a little bit of hit and miss here and there. Let's just see if it's ready yet. Here we go. And it's got the Excel symbol over here. I'm going to click on my Excel symbol. It's downloaded it. And when we open it, you can see here my results over here. And I had somebody actually doing this report with me. And they were saying, well, how can I show coverage? And I said, well, you can show coverage like this. And so I did this with them. And it came out with their versions. And they looked across their features. And they went through the list and they said, oh, no, look at this. We've got terrible coverage over here. We've got no testing going on. You know, it's bad enough if it fails. But if we haven't done any testing, and she immediately went back to her testers and said, we need to improve our coverage of these particular areas of the software. And she went through and she was able to see it from this particular report where they needed to improve coverage. So the tabular aggregated report is a great report for seeing coverage. Let's close this and move back to our reports engine again. And if we look, we can see over here, we can have instances reports over here. Let's do a tabular with steps report, a classic execution report. We could choose what fields we want to see, what columns we want to see in the system. We've got a wide variety across all the modules of the system. Supposing I want to see the linked requirement, for example. So I can go here and I can select linked requirement. Let's see, where is it? Linked issues. I've got linked issues. Let's take a linked issue. I want to see what linked issues I've got. I want to see who the tester was. Don't need the ID. Let's see. We want to have our feature. Let's see test feature. So let's do test feature. Again, we like test feature. We've been using that a lot. Test set version, yes. Tester, name, run status, and last run. Yep, let's do that. I'm going to, again, filter it because I don't want thousands of values appearing. So let's do it by regression, our 18 regression tests. Then we can do run status if we want to. Maybe we only want to see the failed ones. In this case, let's see them all. And then let's click over here. Now, this report will probably take a little longer. Tabular instance. And this is going to be regression. There we go. Click create. So while this one's creating itself, let's move back and have a look at what else we can do. So let's go to new report over here. And you see that we've got are test cases. We can do test cases, and we can do a tabular summary for test cases. We can do detailed reports for test cases, or tabular with steps for test cases. The difference between the instances and the test cases is, of course, that the test cases will show the fields for test cases, and you'll be doing things like test reviews. You'll open up your Excel, do your updates within the Excel, and then transfer those updates into PractiTest, copy them into PractiTest once you've got your test reviews done. Whereas the execution, the instances execution, is primarily for things like for archiving. So you want to be able to prove that you've done your testing and what the results of your testing has been. So here we are, we've got our test instance in regression rather than an instance regression, because I've got a typo there. Let's just go over here and open it up. And here you can see this classic report, which we've got over here. It's got a nice chart on the front, which you can use to take a look at, to give information. You can customize these charts as well. And then the main area, which is the data tab over here. And it shows all the columns which I chose to have in the system. So I've got my test set name, I've got my test set version, which should all be, I've got my test set version. I didn't set this as current release. Then I did my feature over here, tester name, name over here of the test, run statuses, last run date, step position, step name, step description, step expected result, step actual result, and step status over here. So I've got all my information. I've got my total number of test cases, which is 93. And if I go to my issues over here, you can see in my issues, it shows me the current status of all of my linked issues, which have been linked to these particular tests. And so you've got all the information that you need over here. Now, if you want to archive it and you want to do if you need to do something for compliance, you might need to take the data and copy and paste it into a macro or a template, which you're going to always use. And after that, of course, being in Excel, you can do anything which you can do with Excel documents. You can sign them and certify them, seal them, whatever it is that you can do with a regular Excel document. And then when some smart project manager comes to you in 6 months' time and says, this thing is failing, why haven't you tested it? You just bring out the relevant Excel document, show it to them. Yes, this passed. You've done something which has caused it to fail, and we weren't expected to test that. You told us not to test it, or you said it could fail. Sometimes you get things which are allowed to fail, that if it failed in a particular result, you've put a note in or a comment in here to say that this failed and it was approved. Why is it failing? Because it was approved that it could fail. So we've got here a way of creating archived documents which you can use for either compliance or for your guaranteeing your results that they appeared as you actually said that they did. Okay, let's have a very quick look at a detailed report. Just finish off with a quick detailed report. So I'm going to close this off, get rid of this. And now if I go over here and I'm going to open up a report which already exists over here, this is a run failed. So I'm only going to see hopefully failed runs. Well, at least that's what I said I wanted. And you can see here, here's a sample report. This is the PDF version of it. Again, because it's a PDF, you may say that actually I need PDFs for certification. Therefore, I can sign off a PDF. Here it is. And it's all sealed. You can't change anything with it. And this gives full details. So because it's a detailed report, it gives the ID of the test with its name. It gives the description. It gives all your custom fields, any comments, traceability, no issues associated. It has one run associated with it, test date, feature B, here it is. And then over here, it gives me any requirements, and it gives me my run history as well. You can customize certain of these items that they either will appear or won't appear. So if you don't want the history or the traceability to appear, you can turn them off. But in general, these are not customizable, these reports. They give this information It looks pretty, it gives you a lot of information, and you can be very useful for archiving. But if you're actually going to work with it and try and manipulate it, obviously this isn't the correct sort of report. This one has an issue over here connected with it. It says status is opened and it's 1,513 days old at the point where this report was created. So that's been there a long time. And then you can see over here your history as well, which was changed, etc. So you have plenty of data over here to give you information about what's been going on with your testing. Okay. Any questions? Very quick questions. We have 2 minutes left. Questions? No? Okay, in that case, I'm going to let you all go 2 minutes early. Firstly, thank you for joining this. I really hope it's been useful and it's given you good information. If there's anything which we can help you with, please either let support know, or myself, you're welcome to email me as well, or any of your other customer success managers. If you have other customer success managers, please feel free to contact myself or your customer success manager if it's not me, and we can go through, discuss ideas with you. And what I've discussed today, part of it's not in the manual. It's not user manual stuff. This is sort of use cases where we work through them together, have ideas together, and try and get you what you need. So thank you for joining. Wish you a good rest of the day. If it's morning, evening, or night for you, whichever one it is, have a good rest of the day for you. And thanks for joining.